I've criticised Church of England type churches and charismatic Baptist churches where they sing, "My God is an awesome God, he reigns in power and love. My God is an awesome God." Well, and then I've said they sing, "My God shall praise you, my great Redeemer, my God shall bless you." And it's all about me, 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 me. But they're all singing about God, 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 God. But if you take these people aside when they're singing in the church, like they're in a disco, and say to one of them, one of these young people who goes to it, who's between 18 and 40, you say, "You're just singing, 'My God is an awesome God, he reigns in power. My God is an awesome God.'" And you take them aside and say, "Well, what do you think about the world at the moment? What do you think about Nicholas? What do you think about your life and the state of the world and how people understand the Bible?" And they wouldn't have an answer because they would say, "Well, it's God who's an awesome God. God is an awesome God." And you say, "What do you mean? What do you mean by singing that?" And they just say, "My God is an awesome God. He reigns in power. And I can worship like this, and that means God is awesome." And then you say to them, "Well, what is awesome about God in your life or in the state of the world or in how your generation hasn't been established and how there is this view of Nicholas who has been rejected and people are trying to get rid of him and judge him and say, 'Oh, he didn't get his hair cut when he was young. He was like Samson, or he was like Samuel, or a Nazarite, because he didn't like the way he wasn't being treated as a proper boy by his parents. So he didn't bother getting his hair cut because he thought it would be hypocritical because it didn't fit to how he was being treated. And now we're judging him. We're saying he didn't have any friends when he was young because he wouldn't go to the barbers, because he had a phobia about going to the barbers because it didn't fit to his identity. So he became like a Nazarite and grew his hair long like Samuel in the Bible, or Samson. Well, they say, "My God is an awesome God." And we're in 2026, and isn't the world awesome? And isn't people's knowledge of Jesus awesome? And isn't the way we understand the Bible awesome? And we really understand the Bible. When we read Genesis, we say it's legitimate, it's the law, it's the word of God. And we don't really understand why people live to be 900. And we don't really understand why Noah got drunk. And we really don't understand why after God saved Noah with his three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, why Shem's line led through to Jesus. But why did Noah, after saving his sons in the flood, curse one of his sons for his son? And then why did Cain get a mark from God when the Ten Commandments say that murder is a sin? Is the sin, the main sin, disregarding someone and trying to put them out of this life? Because Genesis is a book that we regard as telling us that God exists. He made the world, and he made the world in and all the animals and everything, and the Garden of Eden, and Eve sinned and she tempted Adam. We know all that's true, but we don't understand a lot of the things in Genesis. And why does it say in the New Testament in Hebrews 12:24 that Jesus is compared to Abel? Well, it doesn't say that. It says Abel's offerings were accepted to the Lord, but Cain's offerings weren't accepted to the Lord. So if Abel was accepted, why did Cain kill Abel? And then God preserved Cain and not judge him, and nobody cared about Abel. And then Adam had the audacity to replace Abel with Seth, so that because Cain's line couldn't lead very far because of Cain being a murderer, Adam had Seth so that Jesus could come through Seth. Because Jesus came through Joseph and Mary, who came from King David of Jerusalem, who came from Israel and Judah, the Jews, and came from Shem, which means the name of God, of whom the Jews are. And yet Ham fought against them because he had Canaan, and Canaan occupied the land of Canaan and became the Philistines and tried to exterminate Israel, which was fighting against his brother Shem, which was like Cain and Abel. So why does God compare Noah? Why does God compare Noah's sons with Shem, Ham, and Japheth? Japheth threw a blanket over Noah because Noah got drunk, and God commended Japheth because he let him live with Shem. So Japheth was acting like Abel because Abel was blameless and brought offerings to the Lord, which was accepted. And Japheth's offering to the Lord was that he covered up his father Noah getting drunk, and Noah was pleased, not upset that he covered up his shame because he was embarrassed about his sin. He says, no, Japheth is like Abel. He's great. He can be blessed by God. He can live and be looked after by Shem. And then why does it say in Hebrews 12:24 that Jesus and his sacrifice of his blood can be compared to the abomination of Abel's blood, which was crying out for vengeance, because vengeance was what the Lord bestowed on all the future generations for their indifference to Abel's murder. And now they talk on the television all the time about murder. There aren't these murders really happening. It's just on BBC and Sky News. But they keep talking about it. And it says in the New Testament, wherefore come out from among them and be ye separate. And they're believers on the news, reading the news. But they still keep talking about it because they keep demonstrating that they're still born under the vengeance of Abel's blood, because sin is hereditary and people are responsible for what happened to Abel by Cain. And that's why Jesus took responsibility and didn't sin and laid his life down, so that his blood cries out forgiveness, not vengeance, because people are born under the vengeance of Abel. And why does the New Testament compare Jesus all the way back to Abel, both their blood? And it's because Jesus's blood is the salvation of people's sin of killing Abel and being responsible for it. And Jesus came through Noah, and Noah came through Seth, who replaced Abel. And Jesus would have come through Cain if Cain hadn't been a murderer. And so God judged Cain because Cain's line died out in the flood, even though Cain has some prestigious children. They came to nothing. But coming to something means a lot to God, because Jesus came through Shem, of Noah's son, and the line leads all the way through. And it was a tragedy that Abel couldn't have been Noah's forefather, because if you just say that sin doesn't carry on down the hereditary line, you need to read the Bible, because your children and your children's children are a blessing from the Lord, and your family line to God is important, because righteousness carries down through generations. So does sin. And I'm talking about generations, but the Bible's not linear, it's not chronological. So the law of Moses on tablets of stone, the Ten Commandments, didn't happen after Cain and Abel. It happened not chronologically in the Bible's precepts, because there's no dispensationalism. God doesn't act differently at different times in history. It means that God says the whole Bible is true. And that means what God thought about murder was the worst possible sin ever. And it doesn't happen very often. And it happened ages before Jesus. And that's why Jesus died, because of Abel's murder. And Cain was judged by the very fact Jesus chose to die. The Son of God chose to die because of it. So God wanted Cain to be executed, and he didn't bless his being the eldest brother of Adam's family's line. And the only reason that Abel wasn't Jesus' father was because he was murdered, and he should have been Jesus' father.